Black CEO snubbed in meeting and cancels $500 million contract, but when Marcus Johnson straightened his tie one last time before entering the conference room at Richardson Group and Associates in the heart of Fifth Avenue. The $500 million deal was practically sealed. It would be the biggest contract in his tech company's history. But when he pushed through the glass door and stepped into the elegant space, something in the air shifted. The whispers stopped abruptly, and all eyes turned to him with an oddness he couldn't quite place. William Richardson, the powerful chairman of the corporate group, didn't even look up from his documents as Marcus approached. "Good morning, Mr. Richardson," Marcus greeted, extending his hand. William barely touched his fingers, a quick, dismissive handshake, before turning to the white associates accompanying Marcus. "Gentlemen, please have a seat," William said, completely ignoring Marcus and addressing only his companions. Marcus felt a tightness in his chest, but kept his professional smile. 20 years of building his company from a small office on the outskirts of New York City hadn't been for nothing. He knew every detail of this project, every line of code, every growth opportunity. "All right, let's begin the presentation," Marcus announced, opening his laptop. "One moment," William interrupted, still not looking at him. "Who exactly are you in this negotiation?" The question caught Marcus off guard. He blinked a few times before responding. "I'm Marcus Johnson, CEO of Innotech Solutions. It's my company that developed the entire platform we're offering." William finally looked at him, but his gaze carried a mix of skepticism and disdain. "I see. And these gentlemen?" he asked, gesturing to Marcus's associates. "They're my directors of technology and marketing," Marcus replied, feeling the tension in the room rise. "Well, let's hear what you have to say," William said, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. Marcus began his presentation, explaining how his business management platform would revolutionize Richardson Group's internal processes. But with every slide, he was interrupted by questions that felt more like interrogations. "Are you sure you understand the numbers you're presenting?" asked one of the group's executives, a middle-aged man with graying hair. "Of course, these projections are based on our current clients and you actually developed this yourself?" Another executive cut in. Marcus took a deep breath. His company had over 200 employees, but he still led the technical side personally. "I oversaw the entire development team, yes. I have a degree in computer engineering from MIT and a master's in—" "Interesting," William murmured, though his tone suggested otherwise. When Marcus proposed some improvements to the group's existing system, one of the executives let out an outright laugh. "You really think you understand our business better than we do?" he asked, prompting stifled chuckles from the others. Marcus felt the blood rush to his head. This was public humiliation, and everyone in the room knew it. He glanced at his own associates, who looked down, clearly embarrassed. For a moment, silence filled the room. Marcus closed his laptop with a decisive motion and stood. "Gentlemen, it's clear there's no real interest in this partnership," he said, his voice steady but controlled. "Therefore, we're canceling all negotiations immediately." The silence that followed was deafening. William looked up at him for the first time with full attention. "What do you mean, canceling?" he asked, incredulous. "Exactly what you heard. We don't do business where we're not respected." Marcus began gathering his materials, his hands trembling slightly with restrained anger. The executives exchanged glances, seemingly unable to believe what was happening. "Wait a moment," said William, finally standing up. "Let's talk calmly." "There's nothing to discuss," Marcus cut in. "Good day, gentlemen." He headed for the door, followed silently by his assistants, but before leaving he turned one last time. "Oh, and just to clarify, Mr. Richardson, my company made $400 million last year. This contract represented growth, not necessity." And he walked out, leaving behind a room in total shock. Outside, in the reception area, Mrs. Jenkins watched everything through the slightly open door. She had worked as the head secretary for Richardson Group and Associates for 30 years and had never witnessed a scene like that. Her grey hair was tied in an impeccable bun, and her dark eyes reflected a mix of sadness and indignation. She had known William since he was just the spoiled son of the company's founder. She had seen his transformation over the years, but what she had just witnessed left her speechless. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us newcomers. Now continuing, Marcus walked through the mirrored halls of the office building, trying to control his breathing. His assistants followed in silence, clearly shaken by what they had just seen. "Marcus, are you sure this was the right decision?" asked Kevin, his marketing director, as they stepped into the elevator. $500 million, murmured Anthony, the tech director. Marcus looked at them firmly. "Dignity has no price. And if we accepted that kind of treatment, where would it stop?" he said, pressing the button for the ground floor. As they descended 20 floors, his mind raced. How naive he had been to think success alone would break certain barriers. His company employed over 200 people, had clients across the country, and yet his phone rang as they left the building. It was Kimberly, his wife. "Honey, how did the meeting go?" she asked excitedly. Marcus stopped on the crowded sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, watching the heavy flow of cars and people. "Not great. I'll tell you at home." "What happened? You sound upset." "We'll talk later, okay? I need to get back to the office now." He hung up before she could press further. He wasn't ready to explain the humiliation he had endured, not even to Kimberly. Back at Innotech Solutions' office, located in a modern business complex in Soho, the news spread quickly. Marcus had asked Kevin and Anthony not to discuss what happened, but the tension was impossible to hide. Ashley Wilson, his personal assistant, immediately sensed something was wrong when he walked straight past her desk without greeting her. "Marcus, is everything okay?" she asked, following him to his office. "I'm fine, Ashley. Just cancel anything related to Richardson Group." "Cancel? But the contract is cancelled," he said curtly, closing the door. Ashley stood outside, confused. She had spent weeks preparing all the documentation for that deal. She was an ambitious 28-year-old with a business degree and saw that partnership as a career opportunity. Inside his office, Marcus sank into his leather chair. Through the window, he could see the city's bustle, millions of people chasing their dreams. He had been one of them, chasing something that always seemed just out of reach. He picked up the phone and called Howard Johnson, his father. "Dad, are you busy?" "Never for you, son. What's wrong?" Howard was retired, having worked his entire life as a factory worker in an auto parts plant. It was he who, through great sacrifice, managed to pay for Marcus's education at a private university. "Nothing important, just wanted to hear your voice." "Marcus, I've known you since the day you were born. What happened?" Marcus sighed. How could he explain to his father that even after so much success, some people still saw him only for the color of his skin? "A deal that fell through, Dad. Nothing that can't be fixed." "My son, remember what I always told you. Life isn't about how many times you fall, but how many times you get back up." "I know, Dad. I know." After hanging up, Marcus stared at the photo on his desk. It was him with Kimberly on her medical school graduation day. They had met in college, two dreamers who believed they could change the world. A knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he said. It was Ashley, carrying a cup of coffee. "Thought you might need this," she said, setting the cup on the desk. "Thanks, Ashley. Sorry for being short with you earlier." "You weren't. You just seemed hurt." Marcus looked at her more closely. Ashley had always been perceptive. Maybe that's why she was so good at her job. "The contract was cancelled," he finally admitted. "Why? Everything was perfect. The terms, the timeline. Sometimes things don't just depend on competence." Ashley seemed to understand what he was implying. She lowered her eyes, looking ashamed. "Marcus, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Before the meeting, the secretary from Richardson Group called me asking about your personal background, your parents, where you grew up, things like that." Marcus felt a chill in his stomach. "What did you say?" I told them you grew up in the South Bronx, that your father was a factory worker, that you built everything from scratch. I thought they'd be impressed by your story of perseverance." The silence that followed was heavy. Ashley could tell from Marcus's expression that she had made a terrible mistake. "I thought it would help the negotiations," she murmured, "that they'd see you as an inspiring story." "Ashley," Marcus said, his voice weary, "sometimes people don't want to be inspired. Sometimes they just want an excuse for their own actions." The young woman began to cry, realizing her naivety had contributed to the disaster. "Forgive me, Marcus, I didn't know." "It's not your fault. You couldn't have known." But inside, Marcus felt a mix of anger and disappointment. Ashley had given them ammunition to use against him, even unintentionally. Meanwhile, at Richardson Group and Associates, panic had set in. William was in his private office, pacing like a caged animal. Mrs. Jenkins entered without knocking, something she hadn't done in years. "Mr. William, we need to talk." "Not now, Mrs. Jenkins. I'm handling a situation." "That's exactly what I need to discuss." William stopped and stared at her. Mrs. Jenkins had snow-white hair pinned in a bun, wore gold-rimmed glasses, and carried herself with the dignity of someone who had devoted her entire life to the company. "What you did in that room was shameful," she said bluntly. "Mrs. Jenkins, you don't understand." "I understand perfectly. I've worked here for 30 years. I watched your father build this company on respect and merit. What you showed today was pure prejudice." William's face flushed with anger. "You're forgetting your place. My place is to speak the truth, and the truth is you just lost the biggest contract in this company's history because of sheer ignorance." Mrs. Jenkins left, slamming the door behind her, leaving William alone with his turbulent thoughts. Across town, in an elegant Greenwich Village apartment, Jennifer Richardson, William's daughter, was in her room when her phone rang. It was her best friend, Jason, a journalist. "Jennifer, have you seen the news about your father?" "What news?" "Marcus Johnson from Innotech Solutions cancelled a $500 million contract with you. Rumors are starting to spread on social media that it was due to discriminatory treatment." Ashley felt her stomach twist. At 22, she was studying law at Columbia and was active in human rights movements. The idea that her father might have committed a discriminatory act made her sick. "Are you sure about this?" "The evidence is piling up. Some of your father's employees are leaking information anonymously." Ashley hung up the phone and rushed to the living room, where she found her mother, Dr. Elizabeth Richardson, reading a book. "Mum, I need to talk to you about Dad." Elizabeth looked up. She was an elegant 50-year-old woman, a respected doctor who ran a clinic in the Upper East Side. "What did he do now?" "You don't know?" "He humiliated a black businessman today and lost a $500 million contract." Elizabeth sighed deeply. "Your grandmother already called me. She's furious with William." "Grandma Margaret knows. She knows, and already said she's going to give him a piece of her mind." Margaret Richardson, 75, was a retired elementary school teacher who had raised William with a firm hand after losing her husband early. Even in retirement, she still volunteered at public schools in underprivileged areas. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, Marcus arrived home carrying the weight of the day on his shoulders. His house in Beacon Hill was the result of years of hard work, but at that moment, it felt empty and cold. Kimberly greeted him at the door, still wearing her white hospital coat from work. "Now you're going to tell me what happened," she said bluntly. Marcus sank into the living room couch and told her everything. Every detail, every look of disdain, every humiliating interruption. Kimberly listened in silence, her expression growing more serious by the minute. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry you went through that," she said, sitting beside him. "The worst part is, I expected more from myself. I thought I was prepared for anything. You were right to cancel the contract. Your dignity is worth more than any money. But what about the employees, Kimberly? What if I make more decisions like this out of pride? 200 families depend on the company." Kimberly cupped his face in her hands. "Marcus Johnson, you're the most principled man I know. Your employees respect you for exactly that, for never letting yourself be diminished." The phone rang, interrupting the moment. It was Tyrell, the company's lawyer. "Marcus, are you seeing the news?" "What news?" "The story's blowing up. Journalists are already trying to reach you. Some employees at Richardson Group leaked details about what happened." Marcus turned on the TV. On the financial news channel, a reporter was discussing the Innotech case and its potential market implications. "This is going to turn into a circus," he muttered. "Not necessarily," Tyrell said. "This could be an opportunity to show that certain attitudes aren't tolerated in the business world." But Marcus wasn't sure he wanted to be at the center of a public debate about racism. All he wanted was to work in peace and grow his company. The next morning, William Richardson arrived at the office to find a full-blown crisis. 3 major clients had already cancelled meetings, and the phone wouldn't stop ringing with journalists demanding comments. Mrs. Jenkins was at her desk, handling calls with her usual efficiency, but her face made her disapproval clear. "Mr. William, your mother is on line 1, she announced without looking at him. William sighed and picked up. "Hello, Mom. William Henry Richardson." Mrs. Jenkins's voice cut through the air like a blade. "You will explain to me right now what you did yesterday." "Mom, it's not how they're saying. Don't lie to me. I raised you better than this. Your father is turning in his grave." William felt tears stinging his eyes. His mother rarely called him by his full name, and when she did, it meant he had crossed every line. "I can explain." "Explain what? That my son is prejudiced? That you forgot where you came from? That you lost 500 million out of pure ignorance? Mom, please. I worked my whole life teaching children of all colors and backgrounds. Your father built this company by hiring people for their talent, not their appearance. And you managed to destroy it all in one morning." The call ended abruptly, leaving William devastated. Meanwhile, at Innotech Solutions, Marcus was having an unusual day. Journalists called non-stop, employees asked discreet questions, and emails kept pouring in. One in particular caught his attention. It was from Richard Thompson, a representative of a major American multinational. "Mr. Johnson, I heard about yesterday's incident and would like to present a proposal that might interest you. How about we talk today?" Marcus was intrigued. He didn't know Richard or his company, but something in the tone made him accept the meeting. Richard arrived at Marcus's office in the early afternoon. He was a tall man, around 50, with graying hair and a genuine smile. "Mr. Johnson, it's a pleasure to meet you in person," he said, shaking Marcus's hand firmly. "The pleasure is mine, but I admit I'm curious about your proposal." "Straight to the point, I like that. I represent an international investment fund scouting American tech companies. Your actions yesterday caught our attention." Marcus stared at him in surprise. "My actions?" A CEO who has the courage to walk away from 500 million on principle is exactly the kind of leadership we look for. Richard opened a folder and showed documents that made Marcus choke. "We're prepared to offer a $700 million contract with potential for international expansion." Marcus had to sit down. It was more money than he had ever dreamed of. "Why me?" he asked, still disbelieving. "Because values aren't negotiable, and companies led by people of character are always solid investments." That same afternoon, as Marcus processed the surreal proposal he'd received, William got another call that would change his perspective. It was his son Brian, 25, finishing an exchange program in London. "Dad, I'm seeing the news here. Is this true?" William hesitated before answering. "It was a misunderstanding, son." "Dad, please. You humiliated a black businessman, lost 500 million over prejudice. Brian, you weren't there. I don't need to be, I know you. I've seen how you change when you're angry or feel threatened." Brian had grown up watching his father build the business empire, but had also witnessed moments when William displayed attitudes that embarrassed him. "Do you remember Carmen, our old housekeeper?" Brian asked. William fell silent. Carmen had worked for them for 15 years, until William fired her abruptly after an argument about housekeeping. "Dad, you need to look at yourself. You need to understand your actions have consequences." After hanging up, William sat alone in his office, staring out at the city through the window. New York stretched to the horizon, Millions of people from all backgrounds building their lives together. For the first time in a long while, he questioned who he had truly become. Mrs. Jenkins knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. "Mr. William, I need to speak with you." "Jenkins, I'm not in the mood for conversation." "Then just listen," she said, sitting in the chair across from his desk. "I've worked here for 30 years. I've seen this company grow, I've seen you grow, but I've also seen you change." William looked at her, surprised by her determination. "You weren't like this when you started. Remember when your father hired Jamal for accounting? The first black accountant in the company?" William vaguely remembered. "Your father said the only criterion was competence. Jamal worked here for 20 years, helped the company grow. But when you took over, what are you trying to say?" "I'm saying you've lost your way. And yesterday was just the result of years straying from the values this company always stood for." Mrs. Jenkins stood up to leave, but turned back one last time. "Tomorrow marks my 30th year here. I was thinking of retiring, but now I don't know if I want my story here to end like this." She left, leaving William with an even heavier weight in his chest. That night at home, William faced his daughter Jennifer's fury. "Dad, how could you do this?" she shouted as soon as he walked in. Elizabeth was in the living room, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Jennifer, don't shout at your father," she said, but without much conviction. "Not shout? He publicly humiliated someone, lost the company's biggest contract because of prejudice." William sank into an armchair, exhausted. "You don't understand the pressure I face every day." "What pressure justifies racism, Dad?" Jennifer shot back. "I'm not racist." "Then explain what happened yesterday." William fell silent. How could he explain feelings he didn't fully understand himself? How could he admit he felt threatened by Marcus's competence, that his own insecurity had manifested in the worst way possible? Elizabeth moved closer and sat on the arm of his chair. "William, you need to face this. You have to admit you made a mistake." "I know I made a mistake," he burst out, "but I don't know how to fix it." Jennifer stepped forward, her anger giving way to compassion. "Dad, the first step is acknowledgement. The second is learning." "And the third?" William asked, his voice breaking. "The third is apologizing and truly changing." In the following days, the situation continued to deteriorate for the Richardson Group. 3 more clients cancelled contracts, employees began resigning, and the company's reputation plummeted on social media. William was in his office when Mrs. Jenkins announced an unexpected visitor. "Mr. William, there's someone here who insists on speaking with you. Says they're anonymous, but that you'll want to listen." "Who is it?" "Prefers not to identify themselves, but they've worked here a long time." William agreed to see them. To his surprise, Tyrone walked in, one of the janitors who had worked in the building for over 15 years. "Mr. William, forgive my boldness," Tyrone said nervously, clutching his cap in his hands. "Tyrone, what are you doing here?" "I came to talk about what happened, about the young man from Innotech." William tensed. Tyrone was a black man in his 50s, always polite and efficient at his job. "Sir, I heard what happened in that room. I was cleaning the hallway and—" "Tyrone, you shouldn't have been listening to private conversations." "I know, sir, but I couldn't help it. And then I saw how the young man left. I saw the pain on his face." Tyrone took a deep breath before continuing. "Mr. William, I've worked here 15 years. You've always treated me with respect. But what I saw in that room wasn't the man I know." William felt a sharp pang in his chest. "Tyrone, forgive my honesty, sir, but my son is also a businessman, runs a small IT company, and I know he's been through similar situations." Tyrone pulled a crumpled photo from his pocket. "This is my son, Tyrell, engineering graduate just like the young man from Innotech. And when I see the struggles he faces just for being who he is..." Tyrone's voice cracked and William saw tears in his eyes. "Mr. Richardson, you have the power to change this, to show that not everyone is the same." Tyrone put his cap back on and headed for the door. "I just came to say that, sir, with all due respect." After Tyrone left, William was alone with his thoughts. For the first time, he truly began to understand the impact of his actions. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now back to the story.
Meanwhile, Marcus was living a surreal moment. The offer from the American company was real, and negotiations were moving fast. But the more success he achieved, the emptier he felt. Kimberly noticed his mood that evening. "You should be happy. It's more money than we ever dreamed of." "I know, but I can't get those looks out of my head, Kimberly. That humiliation." "Honey, you made your point. You showed that dignity has value." "But I didn't change anything. William Richardson is still the same person. His company will keep treating people the way they treated me." Kimberly stepped closer and took his hands. "Maybe change isn't your responsibility. Maybe not. But if I don't try, who will?" That's when Marcus made a decision that would surprise everyone. The next morning, he asked Ashley to schedule a meeting with Jason, the journalist friend of Jennifer Richardson. Jason arrived at Marcus's office, puzzled by the invitation. "Mr. Johnson, thank you for having me. I'm Jason Williams from the New York Times." "Jason, I need a favor, or rather a partnership." "How so?" "I want to do something that might sound crazy."
I want to go to the neighborhood where I grew up, in the outskirts of New York City, and start a digital inclusion program. I want you to document everything. Jason was surprised. Why? Because I realized my response to humiliation can't just be personal success. It has to be something bigger. "What about the Richardson Group?" Marcus smiled for the first time in days. "I have an idea about that too." While Marcus planned his next move, William faced the worst crisis of his career. The board had called an emergency meeting to discuss his position as chairman. Mrs. Jenkins walked into his office carrying a box. "Mr. Richardson, I came to say goodbye." "Jenkins, you can't retire now. I need you. You needed me yesterday when I tried to warn you about your behavior. You needed me years ago when I first noticed changes in your attitude." She placed the box on the desk. 30 years of my life are in this box. Photos, memos, thank you letters from clients, the history of a company that was once an example of respect and competence. William felt tears welling up. "Jenkins, forgive me." "Mr. Richardson, forgiveness isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn with real change." She headed for the door but turned back one last time. "If you truly want to change, you need to start by understanding where your prejudices come from, and then work to eliminate them." That afternoon, William did something he hadn't done in years. He left the office midday and went to visit his mother. Mrs. Margaret lived in a modest home in Queens, the same house where she had raised William after losing her husband. When he rang the bell, she took a while to answer. "William, what are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you, Mom." Mrs. Margaret led him to the small but cozy living room, filled with family photos and books. "Mom, help me understand what happened to me." "What do you mean? When did I start to change? When did I become this person I am today?" Mrs. Margaret sighed deeply and sat in her favorite armchair, the one where she used to grade papers when she still taught. "William, you changed when you started being afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of losing what you'd achieved. Afraid that others might be better than you. Afraid of facing your own insecurities." William lowered his head. "Remember when you were a boy and brought home that black child, little Jamal?" William vaguely recalled. "You studied together. You were friends. But little Jamal was a better student than you. Remember how you reacted?" "Not very well. You started making excuses, said he had special help, that the teachers pitied him. I corrected you then, explained that everyone has their own merits." Mrs. Margaret stood and walked to a shelf, pulling out an old photo album. "Look here," she said, showing a yellowed photo. It was a young William beside a black boy, both smiling and holding science fair trophies. "You won together. Little Jamal had the idea, you executed it. It was a perfect partnership. But after this photo, you never wanted to work with him again." William stared at the photo with tears in his eyes. "Why am I showing you this? Because your prejudices weren't born yesterday. They grew little by little, fed by fear and insecurity." "How can I change, Mother?" "The same way you learned prejudice, little by little with awareness and humility." That night, William had an honest talk with Elizabeth and Jennifer. For the first time, he admitted his flaws without trying to justify them. "I need your help," he said. "I need to understand how I became this person and how I can change." Jennifer took her father's hand. "Dad, you've already taken the first step. You acknowledge the problem. And the second? The second is harder, accepting that you'll have to work every day to be a better person." Elizabeth stepped closer. "William, you have a unique opportunity. You can use your position to make a real difference." "How?" "Start by reaching out to Marcus Johnson, not with empty apologies, but to show real change." William spent the whole night thinking. How could he approach a man he'd publicly humiliated? What right did he have to expect a second chance? The next morning, he made a decision that surprised everyone. He dressed plainly and took a bus to the outskirts of New York City. Through online research, he'd learned Marcus grew up in the South Bronx. He didn't have an exact address, but wanted to understand where the man he'd scorned came from. The bus ride was eye-opening. William hadn't used public transit in over 20 years. He watched the people around him, workers returning from night shifts, students in public school uniforms, mothers carrying young children, all living their lives with dignity despite hardships. When he reached the South Bronx, William felt lost. He asked a few people if they knew Marcus Johnson, and to his surprise, many did. "Marcus from Innotech?" an elderly woman asked. "Of course. He grew up right here down the street." "That boy became a famous entrepreneur," another resident remarked. "Always helps the community when he can." William began grasping the scale of his mistake. He hadn't just humiliated a successful businessman, but a symbol of hope for an entire community. Then he saw a small crowd gathered in a square. Approaching, he realized Marcus was there, speaking to young people about digital entrepreneurship. "What matters isn't where you come from, but where you're going," Marcus told the attentive teens. William watched from a distance, struck by Marcus's ease with the youth. This was clearly someone who hadn't forgotten his roots. When the talk ended, William hesitantly stepped forward. "Marcus," he called. Marcus turned around and was startled to recognize him. "William Richardson, what are you doing here?" "I came looking for you." "How did you find me?" "I researched your story. I wanted to understand who the man I humiliated really is." The young people still nearby began paying attention to the conversation. Some recognized William from the news. "Can we talk in private?" William asked. Marcus hesitated, then motioned for him to follow to a bench away from the square. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, without hostility, but with caution. "I want to apologize, and more than that, I want to understand how I can change." "William, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I need to, because I've realized my prejudices didn't start with you. They come from years of insecurity and fear." William told him about his conversation with his mother, the photo with little Jamal, and the revelations he'd had over the past few days. "I understand you don't owe me forgiveness," he continued, "but I want you to know I'm committed to changing. Really." Marcus watched him silently for a long moment. "Why did you come here?" "Because I wanted to see where you came from. I wanted to understand the community that helped shape the man I looked down on." "And what did you find?" "I found that I humiliated not just you, but an entire story of resilience. I realized I lost not just a contract, but the chance to learn from someone extraordinary." Marcus let out a deep sigh. "William, real change doesn't happen overnight." "I know. I'm prepared to do the work." "What kind of work?" William took a deep breath before answering. "First, I'm completely restructuring my company's policies. Diversity won't just be a buzzword. It'll be real practice. And second, I want to create a mentorship program for young Black entrepreneurs with real resources, not just good intentions." Marcus was surprised by the specificity of the proposals. "You've already thought all this through?" "I spent the whole night working on it. I talked to my daughter, my wife, my mother. They all helped me understand what I need to do." "What if I say I don't believe you?" "Then I'll work every day to prove you wrong." Marcus smiled for the first time in the conversation. "You know what impresses me most? You came here, took a bus, stepped out of your comfort zone, tried to understand my reality. It's the first thing I should have done before forming any opinion about you." "William, can I ask you something?" Of course. What really changed in you? What made you realize you were wrong? William thought carefully before answering. My housekeeper, a janitor, my 75-year-old mother, my daughter, my wife, my secretary of 30 years. How so? All of them told me truths I didn't want to hear. They showed me I'd become someone they didn't respect. William paused. But you know what really broke me? Realizing a janitor had more dignity and character than me, the company president. Marcus stayed silent, processing William's words. What do you want from me, William? A chance to show real change. Not words, actions. What about the $500 million contract? Forget the contract. This isn't about money. It's about me becoming a better person. Marcus stood and walked a few steps, watching the children playing in the square. William, I'll make you a proposal. I'm listening. You said you want to create a mentorship program for young black entrepreneurs. I did. Then let's do it together, but on one condition. What? You'll participate actively, not just fund it. You'll mentor directly. You'll step out of your comfort zone every day. William swallowed hard. I accept. And there's more. You're going to study racial awareness. You'll read, attend lectures and talk to people. You'll do the necessary inner work. I accept that too. Marcus extended his hand. Then let's try. William shook Marcus's hand, feeling a mix of relief and determination. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't thank me yet. The hard work is just beginning. In the following months, William began a journey of genuine transformation. He enrolled in diversity courses, started attending lectures on racial awareness, and most importantly, began questioning his own attitudes daily. The mentorship program became a reality. William and Marcus worked together to create real opportunities for young black entrepreneurs, including funding, mentorship, and networking. Mrs. Jenkins decided to cancel her retirement when she saw the real changes William was implementing. Mr. William, for the first time in years, I'm proud to work here again, she said. William's company underwent a complete overhaul. Diversity policies were implemented not just on paper, but in practice. The workforce became more diverse, and the organizational culture changed drastically. Jennifer became the director of the company's social responsibility program, focusing on inclusion initiatives. Elizabeth supported her husband in his journey, but also became active in organizations promoting racial equality in medicine. William's mother, Mrs. Margaret, was so proud of her son's changes that she started attending company events again, something she hadn't done in years. Marcus, meanwhile, expanded his business with the international contract, but never forgot his social responsibilities. He created digital inclusion programs in several underserved communities in New York City. Kimberly supported him in all his initiatives, proud to see her husband turn a painful experience into a driving force for positive change. Ashley Wilson, Marcus's assistant, learned a valuable lesson about the unintended consequences of her actions and became one of the most passionate advocates for the company's diversity programs. Tyrone, the janitor who had the courage to speak to William, saw his son Tyrell become one of the first mentees in the program created by the two businessmen. 2 years after the incident that changed everything, William and Marcus met regularly to assess the progress of the mentorship program. They had already helped more than 50 young entrepreneurs develop their businesses. Marcus, can I ask you something that's always puzzled me? William said during one of these meetings. Of course. Why did you give me a second chance? After everything I did? Marcus smiled. Because I believe people can change. And because I realized your transformation would be more impactful than my revenge. Revenge? I could have destroyed you publicly. I had every moral justification for it. But destroying you wouldn't have built anything for the black community. William reflected on those words. You're wiser than I am. I'm not wiser. I just understood that real change comes from education, not punishment. And if I hadn't truly changed? Then I would have ended our partnership and moved on. But you did change, I can see it every day. William smiled. You know what I've learned these past 2 years? What? That being anti-racist isn't a goal you achieve. It's daily, constant work that never ends. Exactly. And you've been doing that work every day. 3 years after the incident in the meeting room, William and Marcus decided to write a book together about their experience. The title would be From Humiliation to Transformation, A Journey of Real Change. During the book launch at a bookstore in downtown New York City, the two shared their story with a diverse and engaged audience. The hardest part, William said into the microphone, wasn't admitting my mistake. It was accepting that I needed to change behaviors I didn't even know I had. Marcus added, and for me, the hardest part was accepting that some people can truly change, that it's worth betting on genuine transformation. In the audience were Mrs. Jenkins, now 70 but still working, Tyrone and his son Tyrell, who had become a successful entrepreneur, Jennifer Richardson, now a human rights lawyer, and dozens of young people who had participated in the mentorship program. During the Q&A session, a young entrepreneur raised her hand. What advice do you have for people facing prejudice in the business world? Marcus answered first, never accept being diminished, your dignity is priceless, but also seek genuine allies, people willing to do the real work of change. William added, and for those who, like me, might be perpetuating prejudice without realizing it. Question yourselves daily. Listen to people who are different from you, and accept that change is a long but necessary process. After the event, William and Marcus walked together down Broadway, discussing the next steps for the mentorship program. Marcus, there's something I want to propose, William said. I'm listening. What if we expanded the program to other cities? Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston? Marcus stopped walking. That would be incredible, but we'd need a lot more resources. I've already spoken with other business leaders. Many are interested in joining. Some out of genuine conscience, others due to social pressure. But the end result is the same, more opportunities. You've really changed, William. I'm trying to change every day. And you know what? I don't ever want to stop changing. 5 years after the incident that transformed their lives, William Richardson and Marcus Johnson were nationally recognized for their work promoting diversity and inclusion in the business world. The mentorship program had expanded to 10 U.S. cities and had impacted over 1,000 young black entrepreneurs. William had become a sought-after speaker at diversity events, always emphasizing the importance of genuine change over performative actions. Marcus had expanded his company to other Latin American countries while maintaining his commitment to social responsibility. But perhaps the most moving moment came at the graduation ceremony for one of the mentorship program's cohorts. William stood on stage about to hand out certificates when he asked for a moment to speak. 5 years ago, I was a different man, a man who let fear and insecurity dictate his actions, a man who humiliated another human being out of pure prejudice. The audience fell silent. Today I'm here not because I've become perfect, but because I've learned that change is possible, that confronting our worst traits is the first step to becoming better. William looked at Marcus, who was in the front row. I want to thank all the young people here today. You've taught me that talent, determination, and character have no color. You've shown me that my prejudices were just limitations of my own ignorance. Tears began rolling down William's face. But most of all, I want to thank Marcus Johnson, who had the generosity to believe I could change, who chose education over retaliation, who gave me the chance to become a better person. The audience rose in an emotional standing ovation. Marcus stepped onto the stage and embraced William. Two men who had turned a moment of pain into a force for change. Mrs. Margaret, now 80, sat in the audience, proud of the son who had rediscovered the values she'd tried to teach him. Kimberly watched from a distance, knowing her husband had found an even greater purpose in life. Jennifer Richardson was there with her young son, happy to know he would grow up in a slightly fairer world, thanks to his grandfather's work. Mrs. Jenkins, even retired, wouldn't have missed that ceremony for anything. She had witnessed both William's fall and his redemption. Tyrone was in the audience next to his son Tyrell, who that day received the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award. When the ceremony ended, William and Marcus stayed talking on the empty stage. Marcus, can I ask you one last question? Of course. Did you really forgive me? Marcus smiled. William, true forgiveness isn't about forgetting what happened. It's about seeing the person you've become and knowing it was worth believing in change. And do you believe I've changed? Look around you. Marcus gestured to the room where dozens of young people celebrated their achievements. This is your answer. William looked at the young faces, the proud families, the dreams being realized. Thank you, Marcus, for everything. Thank you, William, for proving real change is possible. The two embraced one last time before joining the celebration, knowing they had created something that would last far beyond their own lives. And so what began as a story of humiliation and prejudice became one of redemption, growth, and hope. Proof that even in the darkest moments, there's always the possibility of true transformation. The end. Now tell me, what did you think of this story of transformation and overcoming? Do you believe people can really change like William did? Have you witnessed similar situations? Leave a heartfelt comment about which part moved you the most. Don't forget to like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories that bring important reflections about our society.